Sorry to interrupt. Could the Park and Recreation Room please unmute itself?
But unmuted.
No, that's fine.
Okay. So I'll just say again, I'm Lisa Crichton, so I live adjacent to Kiwanis Park. I've lived in town for about 7 years, so been here a good amount of time. And today just want to talk about an idea and a concept that we have around a community garden at Kiwanis Park, and also want to introduce Karen too. I don't know if you want to say.
I've lived here my whole life. I'm Karen Fabrowitz.
So
Karen what?
is-
Karen Fabrowitz.
Karen is part of our kind of like a de facto planning committee of folks that have come together to talk about the garden.
Mhm.
So I'll go through a few slides really today. I wanted to talk about through the presentation, the why of why I think having this community garden is a great idea for the town. And then go through a little bit of the nuts and bolts of what we're proposing of the actual site and logistics about it. And then would love to chat and answer any questions that you have. So the first slide is around why build a community garden at Kiwanis Park. So really five main benefits of it. Community beautification, social connection, educational opportunities, food security, and sustainability. And I'll go over them in each more detail about how it specifically pertains to New Canaan. So the first one on the next slide is around community beautification. So a garden itself, it really will increase the appeal and usage of Kiwanis Park. As I said, I live adjacent to Kiwanis. I have preschool and kindergarten age kids. We use Kiwanis in the playground, but I have noticed in particular that grassy area in front of the clubhouse. I never see it used for anything other than maybe a couple times a year. So every time I walk by, I could think about, hey, this could be a good spot for it. Just as background too, I was part of a community garden, 2 community gardens when I lived in DC prior to moving here. And it was a great experience for me, for my husband as well. So community beautification, great opportunity to really increase the use of the park. I think that there's a lot of potential there. The picture here actually is of Cherry Lawn Community Garden in Darien. So this is an aerial view of theirs. Some of you may recognize it, but you can see, I mean, it's a really beautiful space and it's very well tended to and it looks nice. So adds some kind of interest to the park. So the next slide refers to specifically social connection. The great thing and my personal experience with this too around community gardens is it really helps build social cohesion among a community, bringing together people who otherwise typically wouldn't interact. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits of the opportunity here to have one in town. And just as an example, actually, when Karen and a few other people, we came together initially to talk about planning this, just happenstancely, every single one of us is from a completely different age and stage of life. So I have myself who have elementary and preschool age kids. Another woman who was there has middle school age kids. There was another person with high school age kids. 2 other folks were empty nesters. We all lived on different areas of the town. I would have never met these people if not for this meeting. So I thought that was pretty cool. And also what I saw, and when I was part of a community garden, I met people from all over the city that I never would have interacted with. And I don't think we have an asset like that in town. You know, we have our great parks and we have the playgrounds, but I know when I'm at the playground with my kids, I'm meeting other parents of young kids. You know, I'm not meeting anyone who has high school age kids and having an excuse to kind of talk and interact. So I think it would be a great asset for us to have. So on the next slide, I want to talk about educational opportunities. So these are kind of twofold. One is peer-to-peer education. So thinking about how as adults, we can learn from other adults about stewardship of the land, seedlings, planting things, figuring out what grows in our zone. If you can tell, I am a gardener myself, that just like kind of playing around with it. So learning from other people. Also opportunities for kind of multi-generational learning. So if you have someone who's been gardening their entire life, so my mother's been gardening her whole life, has taught me so much about things. You just have the opportunity to learn from other people. And I think too, once it's established, there'll also be teaching opportunities for kids. So the New Canaan Community School is right in front of there. There's other preschools or maybe kindergarten could come for a tour or a school field trip of the space. The next slide is around food security. Obviously, I'd be remiss to say that access to having a community garden where you can grow flowers and fruits and vegetables provides access to local organic produce for all the people that have plots there. But as well, what typically happens is you have excess, like a bumper crop of something. So we talked about in the planning committee, having an opportunity to share that with the community, even through like a basket that just sits outside that anybody can take, or for having partnerships with Filling in the Blanks or the food pantry or some other group where we could donate those foods directly so they wouldn't go to waste. So I think there's a lot of cool opportunities there too to kind of share with the broader community. And then next around sustainability. So obviously gardens are good for the environment. They promote healthy ecosystems, which is great within any park. I'll show later in a slide around actually what the garden itself is proposed to look like, and we're anticipating there'll be flower beds with native flowers all around it, so that would also help with our pollinator pathway efforts, all of those different components. And then lastly is around New Canaan Sustainable Connecticut certification. So previously, we received points, so the town of New Canaan received points towards that certification for the garden that was at the Nature Center. So those would be reinstated if we establish something like that. And they looked it up, it contributes 15 points, which is a, pretty significant amount. I don't know if it could get the town to a different criteria or level, but still would help contribute towards that certification for the town. And then the next slide, and I think most importantly, is our community is supportive of it. So the early reactions that I've had just from talking with people about the garden is everyone's had really positive reactions about it, saying that's a great idea. We'd love to have that in the community. This is just a post I put on New Canaan Moms about a month ago, but I don't know if you can see it because the text is pretty small, but there was a lot of likes and a lot of like, great, this is a great idea. I'd love to be involved, so that was really promising too, just to see that among this kind of microcosm of women in the community, without even shopping it amongst the broader community, that there was a lot of positive support for it. So those are what I wanted to go over around kind of benefits. Now I'll shift to kind of the nuts and bolts of the project. So here, just kind of walk up here. This is an aerial view of the entire Kiwanis Park. The swimming hole is here and then the grassy part up here. So the proposed site is up here in red, and then I put a secondary site in blue just that we could discuss. And then on the right-hand side is just a zoom in of where the garden site would be. So just right behind the New Canaan Community School, there's this grassy area that when you first come into Kiwanis Park, that's where we'd be proposing that the site itself would sit. Within Kiwanis Park, the secondary area would be kind of here. This is like, there's a basketball court down here, and then there's like kind of random sand area next to that house that used to be a rental. That is another potential area for it. I would say that the area in red would be my strong preference. The area in blue, the Waikai camp is there all summer. Even if they were willing to kind of give us the space, I live right next to that park. The kids are like having fun. They're super loud. They're running everywhere. I don't think anyone would be super psyched about gardening with all the kids running around. So I just think it would change the kind of dynamic of the space. So our preference would be if we could have it up at the northern end. I guess it would be northern end of the park. The next slide is a potential site plan, and I want to stress that it's very much potential. The size and layout of the actual garden would really depend on the available space of what's available. Ideally, we'd be looking at something that's about 6,000 square feet, just to allow for enough plots to make it worthwhile for all the effort that needs to go into it. But it would include 10 by 10, these kind of squares here, 10 by 10 raised garden beds. There would be a shed to store tools, compost, and then a fence all surrounding it. So there'd be a wire fence, a wire deer fence all around it. And then these W's are water sources. And then around the area that's fenced, we were thinking that we would put flower beds. The reason for this is I met with the woman who oversees the Darien Community Garden, and one of the things that she said she wished she had was some sort of buffer between the fence and the grass, because when those large kind of commercial mowers come in, they nick the fence and damage it. So we were thinking, what a great opportunity to put some native flowers there and prevent that from happening. Also, because the fence is expensive, and if we can preserve it, all the better. On the next slide, I want to talk about budget. So I purposely did not put a number here because the amount of money that it will take to build it is highly dependent on how large it is and the size and the shape. So, but I did want to call out just the major capital needs that would need to happen to get this garden into place. The first being water source. So I met with John and Todd a few weeks ago just to talk about the site and kind of get a sense of if there was a water source there. There is one in that clubhouse that's right before the Sandy area. So one of the major capital needs would be to extend a water pipe from that clubhouse out to the garden site and then install several outdoor faucets within that space. The second major capital need is fencing. So building an 8-foot wire fence all around it to keep out deer. I would also have to go kind of dig into to have the groundhogs that are in my backyard not come over and come over there. And then raised beds. So materials to actually just the wood and brackets to build raised beds, and then soil to fill those beds. The New Canaan Nature Center Community Garden, and many community gardens, they'll just plant in the ground. But I feel strongly that raised beds would be a better option here. We would do soil testing, but just to avoid any sort of question about contamination of soil, I think it'd be preferred to just start with our own soil. And then a variety of other expenses, some of which I think, once we start the fundraising process, we would get in kind potentially from local businesses. That would be the hope. But things like tools, a physical shed, compost bins, wheelbarrows, hoses, all of that stuff as well. And then the next thing I wanted to share was around garden management. So any of you who aren't as familiar with community gardens and kind of how they function and are structured, they are self-managing. So the ask here is really the town to provide this space. And then once the garden is up and running, it manages itself. So there's a steering committee, there's coordinator roles, like a volunteer coordinator, there's a treasurer, everything is run independently. As well, there's written rules and regulations and enforcement policies. This kind of speaks to making sure that it will look tidy and nice at all times. So I'll give an example of rules and regs. When I lived in DC, I used to travel a lot. And they have rules around when it looks untidy and you haven't weeded the garden, that you get a notice and you get kind of like a 3 strikes, you're out. So I know when I was traveling a lot, sometimes I would get a notice saying, hey, you haven't been here in 3 weeks. It looks really bad, And then if you get 3 of those notices, you lose your plot. So there'll be opportunities like that and rules like that to make sure that it won't look unkept. There's also member meetings, volunteer work days, opportunities to get the community involved. We would also manage the new member application process, so applying who gets a plot, the wait list, all of that, and then as well plot assignment. One thing I wanted to note when we talked about this, about plot assignments and how we would do it, that I think it would be great to do a lottery system instead of first come, first serve. So this would allow kind of a wide swath of the community to participate, not just those who are really on top of it of like, okay, there's a sign up, at 9 a.m. on Tuesday. If I get there first, you get the plot. So it would be a lottery system. One of the other things that we discussed is having perhaps a percentage of plots that are set aside for people who indicate that they don't have outdoor space in their own, at their own home. So if somebody lives in an apartment or one of the, condos or something like that, that we could set aside a certain percentage that are like priority for that, for those folks for the lottery, which I think would be nice so that we don't just end up with everybody has their own backyard space and then, kind of luck of the draw. And then there'd also be an annual budget. Oh, just back one, sorry. And then there'd be an annual budget and member dues. So typically there's a nominal member due between like $30 and $100. It kind of depends on the site, but that just covers things like if you had a hose break or something, then it's paid for. So there'd be stuff like that so you don't have to continually fundraise. And then the next slide is potential partners. So this list is just very much of a short list of groups that we've reached out to and have talked to. It doesn't mean that they've signed on in any way, just that we've started talking to. It's definitely a short list, doesn't include everybody. If we're able to move forward with it, we definitely want to involve other groups, in particular seniors groups like Lapham and other groups within the community, to get them involved too and see where they'd either want to participate or just eventually when it's finished that they could help spread the word that this opportunity is here for people to be a part of. So that is it on the presentation. The next slide's just thank you, and then happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the excellent presentation. Will you be primarily growing flowers or vegetables or both?
Primarily vegetables.
Vegetables,
Yeah,
okay.
primarily vegetables, but typically the way that it works is usually within the rules and regs, it would say like, some of them are even more specific of you can grow flowers in your plot, but only 10%. So usually it's meant for actual produce.
Gotcha. And in terms of it, the sheds, would those be permanent structures or would they be temporary structures? In other words, you could move them around if you needed to.
So I think the latter. I think I was anticipating like a tool shed, those wood kind of freestanding structures that you just stick down, not cemented underneath.
So it would be a temporary structure that you could move that if you needed to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. The fencing, an 8-foot fence is big, okay? 6,000 square feet, could be a potential eyesore. You know what I mean? So are there any plans to potentially decorate it or something? I understand why you need it to keep the deer out and people out and that type of thing, but just so it doesn't look like a county jail.
So I would say, I mean, I see your point. I think I think when it first is installed, it may look a little jarring, but they actually kind of blend in. So if you think about it, it's a large space, so it will be kind of like spread out, and it's that black wire fencing. And then once things start to grow in it, your eye is typically drawn more to like what's growing in there.
Okay.
Usually we could put rules about like what can grow on the fences, what can't, but I do also think that the flowers that are around the perimeter, those will kind of grow up too.
Okay.
So it'll make it look, so actually twofold then, they'll actually make it look a little bit nicer.
Sure.
But it does blend in. I mean, there's trees all around there, but I hope it won't look like a prison yard, but we'll try our best.
Any question? Lisa, could you describe the group that would be responsible for this? And how many people are gonna be in that group and how are they assigned to the group?
Yeah, sure. So it's volunteer. I mean, typically the group is comprised of people who have plots within the garden. So if we had 30 plots, you would be you actually typically have to be assigned to a specific role. It's like, if you want to be part of this, you actually have to be part of the community and management of it. So either you could like vote in people or have them self-select to serve in specific roles, but the intention is that it is kind of a microcosm community and you have to serve in some of those roles. In terms of how those folks will come in, they'll kind of self-select by saying, yes, I want to be part of this. And we'll say, well, if you want to be part of it, you have to do one of these 10 things.
What is it going to be, size wise compared to the Darien, Cherry Lawn one? Because I know that one pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. So the Cherry Lawn one is about an acre. That is beautiful. I would love to have that much space, but at Kiwanis, that much space doesn't exist.
So this is
So I
like a
think
quarter of it,
it would be like a quarter to an eighth of it.
an eighth. maybe.
Yeah, I mean, 6,000 square feet is about an eighth of an acre, so it would be about
Okay.
a quarter to an eighth of that
All right.
space. Yeah, they have a huge space.
And it's true that at Cherry Lawn, you don't even see the fences, you're
Yeah.
looking beyond that. So I don't have a problem with the type of fence that you're planning to put in. I think it's a great idea and thank you. Nice presentation.
Very
too,
nice.
all of it. Thank you very
Do you-
much.
Sorry, foresee it being scalable? So like, if you start with 6,000 square feet, but then it's so successful, I mean, looking at the aerial view,
Mhm.
it doesn't, if that's to scale, it doesn't really look like you're taking up a huge portion of that field, that space.
So definitely, I mean, the only thing that the biggest expense to scaling it is just remaking the fence. So, I don't know anything about fencing, but what I've seen of them is they have the posts, so you could just open up the posts and make a larger space if that was the case. Putting new raised beds in, that's really easy. The nice part about Kiwanis Park is that it is level. So it's not like you'd have to regrade it and then do all these things. You would just plop it on top of that level space and then expand out the fence.
And also, do you know, I know the Nature Center is no longer doing their garden. Do you know how many spaces they had?
I don't know that offhand. I've seen it.
It's small.
It was fairly small.
Very small.
Yeah.
30 slots isn't really that big. I just didn't know,
Yeah.
like,
No,
You know.
it's just like a long one.
but I know that it's a miss. People who were part of that garden are disappointed that, there's no options.
Yeah, I mean, I know that when we first moved here, I tried to be part of that, but it was so small that they said, we'll put you on a list, but it seemed like the list was forever because people were really into the space. This wouldn't be so large. We kind of talked about internally a little bit. You can do 4x8s instead of 10x10s. The thing that's nice, Darien actually does 20x20. Those are humongous. The nice thing about a 10x10 is it just gives you more space to kind of play around with stuff. You don't feel like, okay, I only have 4x8. I have to plant my tomatoes and cucumbers and not really have like one year I planted okra, you wouldn't do that unless it would succeed. So our preference would be to have larger plots, but again, we could play around with it. And it would be great to have it bigger. I think I was trying to start small just to not, I think if I showed you a map of the entire part of Kiwanis Park, it's like community garden, it might be a different. conversation. Yeah, exactly.
Would there be any plan that, for example, would the people who had the plots, would it turn over to other people in future years? I mean, would you get it for a year? Sorry. A specific amount of time, a year or 2 years to develop it, but somebody else would have to have an opportunity if there's something. I'm not
So,
familiar with. I
yeah.
think it's a great idea, but I'm not familiar with the.
No, it's a good question. So there's different ways to do it. The gardens that I've been a part of, it doesn't function that you only have it for a certain amount of years. Usually what happens is that turnover naturally happens. Either you have like a life event or less likely here, you move out of town, but something happens and you say, okay, I'm done. Usually, so that would be kind of a discussion of how we do it, but eventually they do turn over. The nice part is the more plots that we can have, the more likely that there'll be turnover, within them.
Can you put up the aerial photos one more time? I don't know, John, if you can. Are there any, I've got something that has occurred to me, running the water, okay? Well, your, the blue area, Plan B.
Yeah.
Okay, would that also be 6,000 square feet there?
I don't know, so I meant to kind of walk it and see, I don't know how big that space is, I think you could fit it there,
In
but
there,
I don't
okay.
know for sure.
And if I'm not mistaken, what you said, there is a water main at the main pavilion that could run, would it be fair to say it would run more easily to site B versus site A?
Yes, we'd probably take it off the old apartment house that's there. So it'd be a shorter distance.
Be a shorter
The
distance.
one problem with site B is the fact that during camp, it wouldn't be accessible.
Okay,
State rules have.
Oh,
you-
right,
you
right,
have
right,
to
right,
stay
good
out of
point,
the
okay.
camp area.
Oh, that's right, okay.
So
okay, so that, all right, that's,
that'd
so
be a tough. part.
where site A, you could access it, you're not
Yes,
interfering
because
with
you're not
camp.
part of their campsite. per se.
Okay, that's a good point. Joe, do you, look, go ahead.
Would this be available to non-residents or just residents?
So we were thinking just residents, that, you know, it's a town park and this would be just residents. Typically it is. I know in Darien, we lived in Darien for a year renting and we were on the list for the garden. And then I got off the list and I told them I moved to New Canaan and they said, okay, you can't have, you know, that's it. So it usually is just residents. There is, you know, usually there will be some sort of town component, like for example, like getting wood chips from the town or something. So I feel like because it's kind of a town asset, that it would be just residents.
Joe, what do you think the cost is of moving the water from the pavilion to site A?
I'm really guessing. Probably $6,000-7,000. A little bit depends how we can come out of the building,
Okay,
because there's concrete sidewalks everywhere.
Right.
So that would be the biggest thing. Right.
and
But the water comes into that building on that side.
Yeah.
So,
Lisa, if this was approved, could you self-fund this startup? I mean, it could be some big dollars.
So we anticipate that we would self-fund it. I had an initial conversation with Robin Mason of Planet New Canaan. She suggested that Sustainable Connecticut funding might be a good initial source. So they have a matching fund where if you raise 7,500, they will match that 7,500. So that could be 15,000 right there. I also had an initial conversation with the New Canaan Community Foundation. Their grant cycle is unfortunately right now, so we're a little bit early in the game, but they did say that there might be an opportunity to apply for funds through them too, to fill some gaps. And then, worst case, you know, we could just do like fundraising events too. But the anticipation is that we would fund it ourselves.
Okay,
Well, not ourselves, we would fundraise for it ourselves. Very clear.
Have you spoken to the Nature Center about their project? And although it's gone away, obviously, but like, you know, what their pitfalls were and what their successes were and all that sort of stuff?
So I reached out to Bill Flynn. I haven't heard back from him. I was gonna just go down there and see if I could chat with him. But I wanted to talk to them too, just to say also, could you share our project with a list of your former folks and see if they'd want to get involved, because they probably don't know about it and they might be motivated. But I'd love to hear more about kind of, you know, what they have, what worked, what didn't. I did meet with Dorothy, who runs the Cherry Lawn Garden. She was super helpful with just sharing of like, if we could do it all over again, here's what we would do, here's what we wouldn't. So even that initial conversation was really helpful.
Couple of buttons. So thank you for the presentation. This is new to me, but it's exciting, especially the education component, because one can learn there and then if you have a space, you can do it in your own home. So it's a great addition to the community. I do have a question again, not having any background on this. If there's any environmental impact studies that you would do, for example, you know, I guess you would limit the use of chemicals or pesticides or you know, any kind of, you know, water drainage, you know, the water drain the same. You know, maybe the parking lot will get more flooded if the water doesn't drain at the same rate. I mean, I imagine there must be a lot of environmental impact from just changing the purpose of that space. I know maybe living pests or animals that maybe are drawn to that area and the neighbors could, I mean, you're a neighbor, so probably, you would have thought about that one. But again, anything in terms of potential environmental impact, how would you assess that? And sort of approach it to, make sure again that there's no pollution from chemicals or things, there's kids playing there, the lake.
Yeah, no, those are great questions. So this garden and typically community gardens are entirely organic. So there's specific rules and regulations around what you can use and what you can't. And for me, just personally, it's very important that it is entirely, an organic, sustainable space. Around the drainage, what I hadn't thought of that, but that would be an interesting question, maybe more for like John,
We
you.
probably talked to the wetlands.
Yeah,
Just
just to know, I mean, my just thought is like, initially, is that right now it's flat grass, and from what I know about if we're planting native things and more kind of water-wise plants, and it may help if there's a drainage issue there. I don't think there is, I've never seen pools of water, but I don't know. And then around the critters, so that potentially, I do know there's a lot of stuff there, that like we have a whole family of deer that goes through our backyard. We have foxes, we have turkeys, we have everything. I don't think it would attract more, with the exception of like maybe chipmunks and squirrels and stuff, because that fence, it would be like a dug under fence. So if the fence is working as it should, nothing will be able to get in. But I love animals, so I actually think it would add to kind of the beauty of the space if there was more stuff around there, if the wild turkeys kind of went there instead of into the woods, but
You also said they were gonna be on raised beds, which
correct.
will help keep the animals away.
Yeah, but the raised beds, I should be clear that the raised beds, they're just like kind of this far off the ground. They're not the ones that are hip height. They would just be kind of this far off. But I don't see any kind of negative impact on that front. But the drainage and that question issue, that is something that I think would be an interesting or a worthwhile thing to look into. Yeah.
Are there any further questions, Lisa?
Who was it that, at one point there was some talk about a community garden in the meadow in Waveney? Does that ring a bell? There, it was obviously the meadow's been there for quite a while, but there had been some conversation about that. We don't have any
stuff there.
Well, it obviously didn't happen, nor will it, because of it being the meadow. I just was gonna say, if we had any record of that or knew who had sort of been like instigating those discussions, it would be, if we knew that, then that would be, just another resource.
Mhm.
I mean, that is really anecdotal from just like reading it probably in like the New Canaanite or whatever, so many years ago, but.
Action of information, yeah.
So-
There's one thing, which John, you can answer to, the nursery school parks there.
Right,
So they'd have to move their cars more into the lot,
they'd have to come down a little bit further, they'd have to walk another.
as it
50
is
feet.
where we're favored to let them park there.
Okay, yeah. One of the things Lisa and I spoke about on the phone is I think we need to probably further socialize this a little bit before we vote on it, okay, tonight, all right? I love the idea, I think it's great, but we obviously have to make sure that we've got, all the bases covered on this. One thing I would like to do is invite you on Saturday, November 23rd. You can at about 11 a.m.
Right.
Come down to Kiwanis and meet the leadership of the Exchange Club, and we'll talk to them about what we want to do. I'm gonna send them an email tomorrow, okay? I don't think this is an issue because that's a very temporary situation, but just so that they're aware of that, the next year we're like, oh, where's this? And Lisa was great and kind of moved the original site A back a little bit. So it didn't interfere with the tree lot operations and because you all have been down there, okay? And we take up a good portion of that area for about a 4 to 5 week year, so
It does get packed.
it can get back, yes, absolutely. So that, now granted, the garden's not gonna be operational at that
The garden
time.
would be fallow at that
Yeah,
point. so
but
you wouldn't have to
I
mow
wouldn't want somebody to back their truck into the fence. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, but if you can come down, I will send an email to those guys,
Sure.
let them know. And in terms of the nursery school, should we reach out to them, talk to them better? Or
I don't think yet.
Not yet?
Yeah, they wouldn't have to move that car. With that said, Betty's raised it.
Okay, Betty?
Hi, I just have one quick question. That area specifically, that's being, labeled for the garden, that is the area that the YMCA, lifeguards and camping staff take up that whole area in the summer, starting in, mid-June until mid-August. So about 8 weeks of camp, that's where they park, and that lot gets filled up throughout the summer. As John knows, there's a parking issue. I like the area where it is, and I think it's, a wonderful idea to have it there in Kiwanis. But it might be tricky for parking in the summertime. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Betty.
You had said you did something with the Y. You talked to the Y before about this?
Oh, no, I haven't spoken to the Y.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it may be a prudent to talk to Margaret Riley, who's the director of the Y.
Actually, Margaret and I are very good friends, and I spend most of my day, because I'm retired, at the Y swimming. And our boys went to school in DC together, so I'd be happy to talk to her about this. I just didn't want to do anything before,
Right.
we all met, because
Right.
that's kind of like.
That would be very helpful, just we want to make sure that this is socialized to the right parties, that no one is surprised.
Right,
I think we're all in support of the idea, but
right.
it's just like you said, the devil's always in the details. And with the exchange club, with the Y, with the nursery school, just make sure we're covering our bases, because each of these organizations use the park, but at different times and for different purposes.
Right, and to speak to what Betty was saying, yeah, the lifeguards, there's not that many lifeguards to take up that much space, and the camp counselors, they kind of park haphazardly wherever they want to, so, they're kids, okay? But if they see a garden, they will adjust their parking, they're not gonna run the garden over, because that's where they used to park.
Right.
I would not. So,
Ask too, I know that the town has an agreement with the Y for the Wi-Fi camp. Is that parking and allocation for parking as part of that agreement? Or is this just that they park there because it's available?
They park there, the agreement really states the section they have for use
Okay.
down below, but since they need a place to park.
Yeah.
They park there,
Just-
and the two times of each day, it's really busy,
Mhm.
drop off and pick up,
Okay, got it.
so.
Okay. I
Do
just
they
wonder,
ever
we talked to
bus
Margaret
anymore?
about like,
Hmm?
that's what I was thinking, could they bus them over, that if we suggest that, I mean, I know the Y has a lot of parking, so if they could.
They only,
Do they bus?
no, not,
At
well,
one
not
point
very
they-
often.
At one point. It was run differently, where they
Well-
had people like meet at the Y and then they bust over later before, maybe they took over the whole space.
I believe the only time they're busing now is in clement weather, because they take them to the high school.
So they bus to the high school, but
If
not
if
to
the
Y.
weather's bad. Because they need a place to go, they don't have enough indoor space.
Seems almost counterintuitive, it's like that they wouldn't just have people drop off at the high school. It's so close. To the Y.
No, it's usually like if a thunderstorm comes in, or it's gonna be a real
Oh,
rainy
then
day, that's when they
leave
go to the high
Kiwanis
school.
and go to the high school, got it,
Yeah.
okay.
Are there any further questions of Lisa? Lisa, what I'd like to do, if it's
Wonderful.
okay, with that,
I just thought this
Oh.
is wonderful, great idea.
is our next meeting is on December 11th. Okay? So less than a month from now. And if you can talk to Margaret Riley, I'll have you to the Exchange Club, meet the folks there. The nursery school, whatever, needs to be done there. And if we don't get any major backlash or anything like that, we'll put it on the agenda to vote on it formally.
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
Is that enough time for you, or do you want to go into January? It's your call on that one. I don't want to rush this. but I understand you want to move the ball down the field.
Yeah, I mean, I would say earlier is better for us because we just need it. The ideal is that we are able to fundraise in the next few months and then actually have it operational for the spring. So earlier is better, just to know if it's a firm yes. And then I know too, I think that there have to be other approvals in place like town council and other things like that, which I'm still
Probably have to go
learning
through
and
planning and
navigating.
zoning. I'm not 100% sure.
On the shed.
Yeah.
Operational for.
Well,
spring,
it's,
I think the water-
it's a change of use of part of town land,
Okay,
so.
So some of the timing aspects, and Francesca was just saying too, like having the water piped and everything, I mean, that is
Yeah,
a
sure.
relatively
Yeah.
quick project, but for spring, I would say, I mean, usually first planting is around April, it's usually around like Easter, maybe May, so it's doable, but really for us, it's the fundraising component that just takes time, and we want to make sure it's fundraised enough to be able to actually plan for it, breaking ground. So, yeah, that would.
will this piping be underground, I take it? Yeah, okay,
It'd be something we winterize when we winterize the building.
gotcha,
We
okay.
winterize that too.
So therefore, even if you have to go to other government agency or other councils, it's important to get, you know, sort of buy-in and support early on.
Mhm.
So this is the start, but hopefully we'll put you on the path to success.
Great,
So,
thank you.
thank you.
Yeah, well
Appreciate it.
done.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, very well done. So, you are more than welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting, but if you at home, I know you have a 3.5-year-old and stuff.
She receives it.
This is riveting stuff.
There's a few people that I don't know. I mean, but I know more than.
There's a.
Okay, next on the idea, is the proposal for a couple of additions to Parks and Rec. There's two additions we need to make to this existing policy. I'll just do it very, very quickly. The first one is number 11, overnight camping or fires without authorized approval, okay? And then the second one is number 34, dogs are permitted at Kiwanis Beach area during regular park hours from October 1st through April 30th. In other words, they're really not allowed there during the summer months, okay? And those are the only two additions.
One, George, I'm sorry.
34, number 11, number 34. Okay, there was also a talk about the removal of dog waste. That's already a town ordinance, so we do not have to add that to this. Okay, but so those are the two items that we would like to add. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
Thank you, Francesca. Second, Lindsay. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? So carries. Thank you. Susan, your early update on Spencer's Run.
Okay, thank you very much. We've actually got a copy of what I'm basically in the report on. It's 1.5 acres and it's, it was opened in 2006 with the trees and the benches and the water fountain and an information board. The annual fee for residents is remains at $25 a year and $40 for non-residents plus $15 for each additional dog. A registration form together with a signed copy of the waiver and acknowledgement of the rules and regulations must be presented to the Parks and Rec Department. Dogs must be spayed, neutered, and display a current rabies tag. Bags are provided to pick up after your dog, and I'll mention something about that later. Currently, as of now, we have 484 dogs registered, 421 are New Canaan. No, that's number 21 wrong, doesn't add up. It must be 221. I think I have a typo. I apologize. 221 New Canaan dogs and 248 non-resident owners. Due to the mild weather, the water supply is still on. Usually by this time of the year, it's been turned off. But once it is turned off, the members generally still do bring a jug of water and fill up the bowls themselves. The big question, of course, is the new lock system. It has been, as we noted in previous reports, a concern. Some people have been sharing their code, and that is a problem. For the new lock system, there'll be signs going up to let the owners know that they have to go to the Parks and Rec to get a fob, to apply and get a fob, and the fob will then open, and the target date for that is, January 6th, for that to be operational.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Sure.
What about a nanny or a dog person who has, you know, who's holding on to the fob? Do the nannies and the, dog walkers have to give their okay that they have read the rules too? I mean, I hope
That's
so.
an excellent question. I don't know. John, can you speak to that?
You know, right now, we don't have the ability to track who's coming in, so whether it's a dog walker, a nanny, or whoever.
Well, maybe when
When
you
we-
get the permission.
When we
that
hand
you
out the
hold.
fobs, which are unfortunately are gonna be $15 a piece because we pay for them.
Yes,
You know, our suggestion is to put it on the dog's leash. You know, you need to have your dog on a leash to get into the park, so then you have it with you.
Right.
So, we don't mind selling more, you know, if you want 3 fobs. That's fine with us.
right, but the
Right.
rules are, key, that they know, that the, you know. the
Are they
dog is
posted on
badly
the
behaved.
information board? Are the rules
The
posted?
rules are posted.
Yes,
at the
yeah.
park. Yeah,
One thing of the January 6th, is we probably need to have some signage there saying, come to, the rec department, get your
we're hoping to get that up in the
policy
next week or so.
Yeah, January.
Yes, and that's why we're giving them a period of time.
Will you have it in December?
The fobs?
Fobs, yeah.
Fobs are sitting in the office.
Really? So I can go up there tomorrow again?
Yeah.
system's not up.
Oh,
Yeah.
Be nice to have.
Yeah, we'll be giving the fobs out before people use them.
okay.
You know, that day would be the day that it gets turned on per se, where you won't get in or out without a fob.
So the
Okay.
question is then, can you get your fob now?
How about another week?
How about
All
another?
right. I'm writing this down because I gotta get my fob.
For Joel, I'll be.
Sounds great.
John,
Sounds like a really
John,
good.
can a fog be shared, just like a code?
Yes,
What's the difference?
that's the problem.
It's a lot easier to share a fob, and here's the thing, if Hank Green gives his fob to somebody else and something happens, Hank Green's gonna lose his privilege. That can be turned off as easy as me logging on and turning them on and off. We'll track everybody that comes in and out,
Will that be clear to people?
yeah.
Okay.
So the
Yeah.
fobs are gonna actually have the person's, the owner's name on it?
No, electronically, we know who we give what fob to.
That's what I mean.
Yes,
Okay.
but you don't,
Yeah,
you
I
won't see
said
your
it wrong.
name per se on it.
Right. I
Right.
understand.
So then presumably to Francesca's initial question, for your fob, you're responsible for the person who
Right,
uses it
so if
knowing
my
the
dog
rules.
sitter goes and breaks the rules,
You're
I'm responsible, and I love that.
There's accountability.
Accountability.
Can I
Yeah.
ask a question?
Sure.
Is there a camera to the
No,
police? All right.
No, but right now, unfortunately, with it being a 4-digit code, we have no real control.
Mm.
You could have my code and vice versa,
Yeah, no,
and either way, we
I've
know.
heard yeah. No, I don't even have a dog anymore, so. I've never even gone there.
Mhm. Okay.
that's
I
great.
think it's great. I'm putting down to pick mine up on Monday, December 2nd.
At least you got us past Thanksgiving.
Exactly. There will be some runway time people need to.
That's why we're giving it, gonna,
Yeah.
hopefully
And
give them
also,
over a month.
Obviously, somebody's gonna ask, suppose they can't get there during office hours. You know.
That's why we're giving them over a month. We think they'll be able
They'll
to.
be able to do it.
They have to come to the office to register their dog in the first place, so they're doing that every year. They're
Okay.
supposed to be doing that every year.
But do you mean the people that are valid now that will just be buying a fob, they've already registered for the year?
I'm just,
Yeah,
you know,
I mean,
anticipating the, but I work, I can't get this.
so they can mail a check, I can mail it to them.
Hmm.
And that's what we do with.
If they're already
With the
registered.
membership tags and the PIN codes now. If you can't come in, you can mail all of your information to us with a check. And I'll mail it out to you.
But you're still responsible. Once it's registered to you, you are the responsible party.
And now we'll be able to shut it off. If we have an issue.
So behave yourself. Okay, great. Also, repainting of the sign and power washing of the entry portal is on the docket.
On the docket, I'd love to say that we can definitely get it done this fall. We might not be able to. It might be early spring.
I spoke with Barbara Scott, who is, basically represents the dog owners. Most of you probably know, but she's there every morning at 5:30 apparently with her dogs. And she first noted that we're so far fortunate to have such a beautiful dog park. And she meets with John regularly and was very complimentary and said that you are so responsive and Parks and Recs fill in the holes in a timely manner and provide the poop bags. She noted that the entry side lock appears to be stuck and is not working.
It's been fixed. The batteries are dead.
Okay, great, thank you.
That's what she told us. It was fixed that morning.
Sure.
And I think she probably sent the email around 5:30.
Yeah.
Between me leaving my house and getting to the office, I saw that.
Now, the other thing that of course came up again was the owners of small dogs are requesting a separate issue, and I know this comes up every year, but she mentioned it, so I'm bringing it up. She also noted that there are some people who share their override code, that there is an override code, and there are people who are sharing it. Hopefully that whole issue will be gone.
There will be no code to get in. There will be a fob or not.
She did note that there are some members who are terrible about picking up and disposing of the poop bags. And she gets there at 5:30 in the morning and says she picks up 15 to 20 bags and throws them away. I don't know what one can be done about that, but I think it needs just to be noted that people aren't being considerate.
Yeah.
Basically what it is. I had also spoke to Sean Goodjohn, the animal control officer, and he said that he's not received any specific complaints about or from people about the dog park. He mentioned that he'd like to see an area for small dogs. I'm not quite sure why he wants one, except that maybe he's had requests from people. And he said that, and I said to him that this comes up every year, and he talked about what he's seen at other dog parks and the way it works, which I guess once you're in with your fob, what he has seen is an area where, an 8x8 area where it would be fenced off and small dog owners would go through another gate and, maybe unlock the gate and just go in. You can go in either one. That was just his mention of what he's seen before. He said right now, the small dog owners come at a different time and often leave if a large aggressive dog comes. That's the way they're handling it, but this request seems to come up every year. So I'm relaying it. That's really.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any dog parks around here that do have a smaller space for dogs?
Well, that's a great question. I
Yes,
don't
Richfield,
know, but I-
Richfield does. Yeah, my wife and I visited Richfield.
Really?
yeah,
It's
and-
not very interesting.
No, Richfield does, and I think your dog has to be like under 25 pounds.
Mhm.
And it's none of that. I've talked to a couple of people, and I have a small dog myself. I think part of it is this would have to be probably privately funded, quite frankly.
Mhm.
And if somebody, I've spoken to a couple of folks there saying, listen, if you can come up with some money here, come to us. We will probably be receptive there. There is a challenge about the different gates, but.
Yep, the Spencer's Run group per se has also fielded the same questions. And they've always come back with, we don't think that's a good idea at this time. So there's,
Are they saying that because they're afraid that they will lose some of their acre and a half?
for small dogs, you're not losing that much, but they would. There's,
It would
it would probably
definitely
be
have to come
inside,
out of
you
their
know.
space.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
just thinking of the area.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
Can this commission overrule that?
I'm sure, yeah. They are, more of an advisory group, similar to, the commission could
I mean, it seems that people are asking every year.
Yes, but it's literally maybe two people.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah, I mean, very, very few. So,
And many of them
It's
come
same
to
to
us about it. It's a
Yeah.
personal request. There's no fear for their dog,
Really no
but
sense.
that's how they feel about it.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Are there any further questions for Susan?
No, good job.
Thank you very much. Great report. I appreciate it. Paddle courts, Francisco, you guys have tabled that, but Jen, do you have any, just in terms of paddle court usage, any thoughts on that or?
very anecdotal is that the pickleball courts are still awful busy. So we don't have quite as much usage. Our classes are down. They're not completely booked up.
Okay.
Some of them we've actually had to cancel because not enough people have registered.
Really?
Yeah,
How?
so, yeah.
Yeah.
So, not saying there's no use by any means. There's still a lot of use, but it hasn't kicked off. It's still been too warm, I think.
That's
good.
You know, it's not,
This is the first.
A lot of use tonight.
yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it
So.
is full tonight.
All right, well, I appreciate it. And then we'll move on to your report.
Okay, well, my report, I got one main thing to talk about. And that's Ryan Restivo, as of last Monday, is the park superintendent. So for us, it's great, you know, he's very enthusiastic, he takes on any task, even the bad ones. And quite often, you're not even being asked or told to do them.
Right.
You know, he's very knowledgeable with turf management and the athletic fields and the programs and everything else, and we're very, we're very happy. that He's the park superintendent. So, yeah.
Thanks all.
You should.
As far as parks itself, you know, the guys have been working on leaves, you know, that's one thing dry weather helps except for all the dust. But with that said, the wind of yesterday, things like that really did help, except in certain spots, but they've been working on that. Coppo Field, the baseball project's been going well. They like the dry weather. We've had some issues with dust, but they now have a water truck out there to try to keep the soil moist so it doesn't blow around. So that's going well. As far as recreation, you know, Fall Festival went well, sold out completely. We're before and after school programs. Are getting ready for the sessions to register them. It's good turnout for that. Parent teacher conference programs are opening tomorrow. Breakfast with Santa, we decided to add a fourth session. And with that said, we still have 378 people on a wait list.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah, we just can't, there's just no way, and it happens to be, I believe, the same day that the Nature Center is doing a similar thing. So
Amazing.
ours is better, I'm just saying. Right, yeah. So. And other than that, if anybody has any questions.
If John, I know we pestered you about this before, but any update on the playgrounds in Waverly?
We're gonna let the new part of superintendent feel that way, since that's his project.
Well, as far as the fitness area goes, we'll start there. So that's complete. The only last step that's needed to be done is an ADA walkway that will go from the ice rink parking lot to the fitness area. So after that's complete, on Tuesday, I'm going to the Board of Selectmen to get approval for new plantings within the site. So that'll create some screening and more specifically for the fitness area. And then as far as the playground goes, we're still fundraising. There's a fundraising committee. They have a logo, an Instagram page, a Facebook page. So we're kind of just waiting for that to continue.
How much are they looking to raise? How much are they?
In the ballpark of like $300,000 or over. And this is all based on a dream list, so.
Right.
One of the most expensive things, a part of the project is the port and play surface, but as far as accessibility goes, that's your number one, so. That's a major implementation that we need to have there, so. That comes with an expense, so. But we'll be meeting again shortly. To discuss the equipment and try to finalize that and really solidify our dream list, so.
Right.
But that's really it. And, I'll update you guys, December 11th, hopefully with some better updates, so.
Perfect. Thank you, Ron, and congratulations.
Yes, thank you all, grateful.
One quick question for, John, the, hut at pickleball courts is, when, is that planning to be changed?
Well, we're still looking to have the parking lot redone and to
Okay.
incorporate it with that, so it's still in the planning stage right now.
Okay.
We're working with Public Works to make that change.
That was actually my question. I remember we had the presentation where some of that work was described. And some was done, there was some trees that came down on the side parking lot to Webby House. What is the timeline for that particular project? And it's gonna, I think, be coordinated with the walkaways you described, right? Is that for next year?
Next summertime,
Next summer?
so it'd probably be after the family fireworks is the hope,
Oh,
so.
And then pickleball courts at Waveney, is there any movement on those?
We're going to, we'll see how it goes, but we're trying to put in, we're working on our numbers for our capital budget now. We're gonna try to put that into next year's ask, into the ask, we'll see how it goes.
And is there anything that we can do, attend a meeting, help vote for it?
Yes. The way, right now, we're putting our budgets in, we go through the first selectman first. She looks at them, then we go to the Board of Selectmen. And I'm trying to say, you remember, Ryan, was that January? It's January. So mid-January would be the Board of Selectmen. And then mid-February, Board of Finance, and then Town Council's mid-March.
I'd love to be kept up to date on
Okay, I can send you out the tentative budget schedule.
Thank you.
Right.
Tell us where you want us to.
The other part would be socializing it too, there's. The need, for more pickleball courts. The thing that would be nice with pickleball courts in the park is we could light them,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And play early.
Yeah.
Play early has been the
We-
hardest thing.
We don't have the noise issues, so.
Okay,
Thank you.
any questions for John? Betty, did you have a question? I see your hand up.
Oh, that's for the really put down.
I'm waiting for public comment.
Okay. Thank you, John. And then in terms of my report, extremely brief as always. Our next meeting is on Wednesday, December 11th. We'll be here, 7 p.m. Our January meeting, by the way, I'm assuming it's going to be Wednesday, January 8th. I know we will come out with the list of meeting schedules for next year in January. But I would just say in terms of marking the calendar for January 8th as well, would that be a safe date?
It is the second one,
Second.
that makes sense.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Yep.
But then we usually in January come out with the meeting schedule for the year. So you can plan your life according. So, great. Okay, that's it for me. Are there any other questions? Betty has something for public comments.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Betty Lavostic, Old Norwalk Road. I had my hand up, but I guess you didn't see it when Lisa was still there. Before she goes to the different town bodies, I think the best place to start is with the town attorney at Bircham Moses, because there was a stipulation in the deed for Kiwanis Park that the park is to be used for recreation purposes only. So before you go to the town bodies to approve it or not approve it, I think the best place to start is the town attorney on her garden.
Would
And then-
gardening be considered a recreational activity?
Well, I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I don't consider gardening to be
Okay.
recreation like sports. So,
Okay.
I mean, I'm just saying, just to clarify it on there, and he may just say, yes, it's fine and proceed, but just to make sure you cross the Ts and dot all the Is on it. And then, secondly, thank you very much for considering my, my comments on the proposal for the conduct in the parks. And I did send 2 emails on October 19th and asked that it be included in the documentation for FOIA. And I didn't see the 2 emails. I was requested to send the emails at the October 9th meeting, and I did. I sent it to John, to the commissioners, and to B, but I don't see those 2 emails anywhere.
Well, Betty, okay, I can't talk about, I didn't ever saw an email from you, but, and I have a town email, but we did take
But-
all your comments into, and that's why we had 2 additions based on your feedback.
Right, but I'm saying I sent it, your town email is not on the website, and I reached out to B at the
Okay.
meeting.
We'll get that, okay, we'll get it, but we appreciate what you did. Is there anything else, Betty?
No, I was just going to say I'd like those 2 emails added as a separate document in case somebody under FOIA wants to see them.
Okay, I'll look again and see if did you send them to myself and John?
I sent it to John, I sent it to all the commissioners where it says if you want to reach the commissioners, send it to Park and Rec Commission at that government email, and I sent it also to B. And I've done this in
Did
the
anybody
past.
have it? Did anybody see it?
No.
I did not.
Well, John,
Maybe
John, it
just
went
do
to-
this, hey Betty, can you just resend it to John and John only?
well, you would have gotten it, John, on the 19th, both of them.
Okay,
I
can
will
look
send
back
it
through my
again.
email.
Yeah, just
I
maybe,
don't delete them.
hey, just maybe just resend it to John, make it easier, so he doesn't have to go through a treasure hunt here.
Yeah, I will, and I do want it, I want those 2 emails completely sent into the documentation
Okay,
for FOIA. Thank you.
all right, thanks, Betty. That's it, is there a motion to adjourn? Lindsay, President, second, all those in favor?
Yep.
Thanks, guys. Great job. Yeah,